Well, military and diplomatic analyst Chidi Nwaonu joins us live from London. Chidi, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the army is yet to get these funds, and you know the extent of the fight against insurgency. We've had several operational losses. What do you make of this development, seeing that we need to really engage the insurgency and get this fight done with?
Well, it's a very curious development, because one would have thought that by now these funds would have not only have been released, but the monies would have been put to good use. But so I look at it in two different ways. The first is obviously, as I said, the kind of dysfunction in that you've had this money that's been budgeted and it's not been released. The questions you've got to ask is what's the hang up, where's the hold up been, and why has that not been worked through much earlier than this? Why have we got to the point where we're having military disasters before we start asking about these funds? But the second element is, what are these funds being released for? Because the unfortunate thing in Nigeria is that we focus a lot on spending money, but not on how we spend the money. So if that money is going to be used to buy obsolete vehicles or weapons that we don't need, then it's just as good that it stays where it is. Because there's a lot of structural issues with the Nigerian military that need to be resolved. And 1 billion naira or $1 billion might not be the solution to that problem. But it would still help, but we need to know what the details of the expenditure would be before we really get worried.
Well, knowing what the money is being used for, but then the fight we need to get these weapons, because some military personnel have complained about having been given obsolete weapons. And then we're also hearing that the reps are calling for a probe into these funds. But whichever way, this has to be resolved. How do you expect, or what do you expect to resolve what these spendings are for and ensure that the military personnel get their weapons? How do you expect that it should be resolved?
Well, there's again, as in everything, there's two key elements. The first is Parliament. Their job is to hold the executive and, the ministries to account. So they should have been probing this if this was of such importance, which it is. They should have been probing this from the get-go. They should have been tracking these funds, from when they were requested to where have they been released. If they've not been released, why not? And if they have been released, how are they being used? At the same time, they must go back and look at all the previous weapons purchases, because Nigeria has spent a lot of money purchasing weapons, purchasing weapon systems, some of them that are a little bit, beyond what we actually need for this actual fight. We've bought lots of T-72s, lots of MRAPs, and all of these vehicles, which, when you look at the Boko Haram videos, you see them getting taken out. So you've got to ask yourself, if these are vehicles that are fit for purpose, how come guys riding around in pickup trucks, firing RPGs, are taking out a main battle tank? So there's questions that need to be asked. And at the same time, the executive, is their duty to pursue this, and the Ministry of Defense. So it's curious that we've got to this point, December, which is traditionally when the Nigerian military should be taking the offensive. They're still saying that they've not received the funds. If they've not received the funds, it means they've not prepared their logistics or any of the equipment they need for this offensive. So how is the offensive going to take place? There are a lot of questions that need to be asked and answered, and rapidly. And all I see is people passing the buck and blaming each other rather than looking for solutions.
But then the Chief of Army Staff has talked about bureaucracy involved in getting access to these funds and also other bottlenecks. But then is it really about the military not following up on how ensuring that they get access to these funds, or it is about that well, perhaps the Senate is trying to ensure that, we've had cases of corruptions where we have the Suki Gate, where $2.1 billion is still to be accounted for. We have had an issue of $9.7 billion, naira rather, by M. Marshal Umar Sadiq, yet to also be accounted for. Perhaps these are the things that we are trying to guard against.
Yeah, so that's the definite issue, as I alluded to previously. There is a huge amount of corruption in the defense sector. That is something that, is endemic, not just in Nigeria, but particularly in Nigeria, because, there's no transparency. Everything related to the military is shrouded in secrecy. They won't tell you how many casualties they have, how many vehicles they lost. Everything is shrouded in secrecy. So it's a great avenue for corruption. But the way around this is transparency. If you publicize that you've bought X number of vehicles, or you spent so and so amount of money, then people can at least trace all of that, what's been done, and then you have a better idea and you can chase people up. But at the same time, as I alluded to before, you can say that you've bought 20 tanks or 20 armored personnel carriers. But those vehicles are not fit for purpose. Either they have knocked engines or no tracks or no spare parts, which means essentially you spent a lot of money on scrap. So there has to be a lot of accountability, and that's the job, in this context of Parliament and all the other bodies that are involved. And if I were, given, a remit in this, I would set up a specialized task force, not a committee of like 15 people who will sit around and talk, but a task force led by somebody, respected former military personnel, who will look into military procurement. And if necessary, set up a specific agency for military procurement that reports to Parliament every quarter or every month or whatever it is, and says, this is what we've been budgeted, this is what we've spent, this is what we're looking at. And then that reduces the avenues for corruption, because it's all out in the open. If you say you spent 20 million and you've bought this, that, and the other, and you can't show it, then everybody knows. Then it becomes, something that, is undeniable. But until we change our methods, this is never going to end.
All right, the military and diplomatic analyst Chidi Nwaonu, thanks for your time on the News Hour.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.